My son became ill with schizophrenia when he was 19. He died at 23. My wife, after 40 years of marriage, well, during the 40th year, she had glioblastoma and died at the end of that year from my son. And don't take shortcuts that you will regret. Whatever I do with my life, I want it to make a difference that I was there. And it shouldn't waste it. I wouldn't expect my son to have respected me if I folded up on him. Let me talk about the loss of my son quickly.
This is RichNation WBPT podcast, the #1 podcast in the world. We introduce you to the people and ideas, and we bring people together. Our goals and mission are to introduce you to the people and ideas that will help you actually execute on your dreams, find purpose, and set goals. You will learn how to level up your mindset and develop leadership skills both in business and in your personal life, and learn how to live to your full potential. I hope you guys enjoy the wisdom and pursue your dream. Enjoy.
In 1978, I spent several years, I was in the real estate finance business on Wall Street, going to law school at night, and I had two passions. One was the marine environment, and I grew up around here, Narragansett Bay. We had a small boat when I was a kid, 16.5-foot sailboat. As a kid, I always wondered what it was like to go over the horizon. Not like Columbus, flat earth, I didn't mean that, just like, what's it like? It just grabbed me. And then I got enamored of financial structures as I got older for complicated reasons, but they appealed to me mentally, intellectually. We pioneered a number of financial vehicles for international shipping in the New York capital markets, things that hadn't been done before. And they were built on my experience in the real estate finance business for 6 years, plus the benefit of the legal training I got, although I never practiced and I had no intention to practice. But we basically took real estate finance concepts and applied them to ships. And I made it a point to track the capital markets for property, for real estate. And I felt like if I could get enough time with somebody who was an investor in real estate, I could get him into a ship, which was sort of floating real estate, very simply put. So the dollar value of the 140 plus ships, I never added it all up, but it must have been well over $1 billion. I mean, it was a lot of money. The biggest deal we did was buying the Canadian Pacific fleet. That was 19 ships in one go, one contract. We were a Wall Street shop. We were the first dedicated real estate finance shop on Wall Street. Eastdil Realty was a product, it was a subsidiary of Eastman Dillon and Union Securities. And then as employees, we got to own some of the stock. Our clients were real estate developers, big companies, a lot of Texans. I mean, Trammell Crow was a big client, Lincoln Property. I wanted to get into the real estate business, but from a financial point of view. This is because of somebody I met, the father of a girl I knew who had done this for himself, and he left the corporate world because he'd figured out how to buy a distressed piece of real estate with somebody else, and they were off and running. And he left the corporate world, which is an important thing to be able to do, to get away from W-2 income. I mean, if you've got people who are trying to figure out how to do this, you got to keep your expenses. It helps if you have an understanding wife. If you don't have an understanding wife, it's probably better not to have a wife. Freedom, you're working for yourself. So now you're an artist in a studio. What do you want to create? That's how I sort of felt. I had to do something because I had to eat. And I was, in fact, married at the time that I did it. And my wife was very understanding that I had an entrepreneurial drive. I didn't think of it as being an entrepreneur. I just thought of it as wanting to lead my own life. In today's world, that leads to entrepreneurship. If they have that dream, they're all set. They just have to follow it. I did. Most people don't, actually. They have a lust, but they don't have a dream or an envy. I had a passion. I mean, I loved the marine environment, the marine world. I wasn't into it as an environmentalist exactly, but I loved being on boats. Loved the ocean. I had a fascination for what it might be like to go over the horizon, I told. And then I got enamored of financial structures, which was just something innate in me. I wasn't a mathematician, that's for damn sure. The logic of it and the way it worked was appealing to me. And then I saw the possible synthesis of those things. Nobody was doing it. That's attractive. And I felt like whatever I do with my life, I want it to make a difference that I was there. So that kind of works against being a cog in a wheel, or whatever you call it, like a tooth in a cog. That didn't work for me. As I got to know myself better, as part of the maturation process in your 20s, I realized I'm not really cut out to work for somebody. It's not because I want to tell everybody else what to do. I don't have any interest in that, actually. But I don't want to be told what to do. And then you have to accept the consequences of that. If you want to, and my father's father had a saying, apparently, because I never knew him, he died before I was born, 1862. The people who say they never had a chance never took a chance. I had no money. I still had some college loans. The world has a lot of capital looking for a home, and there's a natural, potentially stressful relationship between operating partners and financial partners. The financial partners need operating people. I mean, if you were a guy downtown in New York doing financial deals, you can't go buy a ship. You can write the check and then you'll go broke. You won't know what the hell to do, and believe me, there's no good book to read about this because you're operating in a fundamentally hostile environment. I mean, it's salt water and all the vagaries of the weather, which can be boiling hot or Arctic cold, and you're running steel and machinery. I mean, good luck. So you can't do it as a novice. Somebody's got to know what the hell they're doing on the operating side. So we need each other. You know, I'd like to own ships and keep operating them. The financial people want to get out. That's an inherent tension in any industry, financial people and operating people. But they're looking for you. I mean, they need us. I mean, I didn't know that when I was a kid. You know, I thought, well, you know, you get the money, well. But people have money and they don't get paid to sit on it. They get paid to invest it. That's available for everybody who knows what they're doing. My son became ill with schizophrenia when he was 19. He died at 23. My wife, after 40 years of marriage, well, during the 40th year, she had glioblastoma and died at the end of that year. And I mean, I've survived good times and bad times. And I'm very deeply motivated to try to be helpful to people because of the things I've been through. They were so difficult. I'm not patting myself on the back. They were just difficult, and I was able to get through. I like to be helpful to people and encourage people. Stick it out, and don't run, and don't take shortcuts that you will regret. Let me talk about the loss of my son quickly. He became schizophrenic when he was 19. He was a really brilliant kid, and his behavior changed, and we said, look, what the hell's going on here? And nobody suspected any kind of mental illness, but that's what it was. He died in a car accident. He took my pickup truck and went to Cambridge, Massachusetts from Little Compton, where he was spending the weekend, which he shouldn't have done. That was beyond his. He was okay for driving around town. I didn't want him on the highway. And he, I think, had a paranoid episode based on the observations of his driving from Fall River down to Little Compton on the return trip. And he lost control of the car. My wife and I were joined at the hip to deal with his illness or to help him deal with his illness. And then when he died, we were devastated. And for some months, the emotional pain was so severe it became physical pain. And you don't want to get up in the morning, but you get up and then you're standing up and you want to fall down on the ground and stay there. But you literally, you figuratively and somewhat literally, you have like hundreds of people standing shoulder to shoulder with you who want to help you. So you can't just fall back down on the ground because then you're letting them down. You're not doing yourself any good. It's not doing my son any good. And I said to my wife, Hope, I said, you know, we got to get this in some kind of perspective or context so we can live with it because this is torture. The only thing worse than the way that we felt would be if we didn't feel that way. Then what the hell was this all about? You're telling yourself how much you loved your child and the investment you made emotionally and time and giving up other things. It's all bullshit when you got a problem like that. There's only one thing you're interested in, it's somebody's health. And I realized we're hostages to love in life. You don't get over losing a child, but you learn to live with it. We moved on from that and had the realization that we had been given, in a sense, a very expensive and painful gift from our son, which was you get your heart enlarged and you become a lot more aware of suffering around you, people that have problems and have challenges and could use help. And you become more, not only more empathetic, but more proactively empathetic, where you act out your empathy by trying to be helpful to people. And I'm sure that, like me, if you knew you were on the sidewalk talking to somebody whose next move after talking to you was to go 20 floors up in some building and jump, there isn't anything you wouldn't say or do to try to stop that. So I stick my nose into problematic situations that people are having, and I don't care if they want to hit me. I mean, I might be able to be helpful, and I wouldn't say I've helped somebody in that extreme case I described, but I've definitely helped people who were lost and needed it. So that's a gift from my son. And it shouldn't waste it. You can see how tough it is sometimes. But that's the way we're made. But boy, I'll tell you, when you have problems, it certainly, whatever bullshit quotient you are carrying through your life, it gets reduced pretty close to zero, because you've really come in touch with what's important. We don't deal the cards in life. We have to play them. And everybody should understand that. I wouldn't expect my son to have respected me if I folded up on him. I had two basic jobs, which was to protect my family and provide for them. So, it's you in the face. I mean, if it doesn't, you're fucked up. I don't pretend to be immune to that, but that's why I made my comments about the money culture, and especially for kids. I mean, you know, it's tough on them. I mean, I see the kids today, they all think they should have what their parents have, and their parents might have spent a generation working for it. And that's not true of everybody. Some people are born with it. That wasn't my case. It's important to live a full life and a good life, and it's its own reward. And I think that I'm not naive about it. I said when we spoke the first time, I said, you know, it's nice to have some money in your pocket. I get that totally. I totally get that. But you can't destroy yourself for it. And I think you want to be careful not to burn out your marriage for it, which happens in a lot of cases, especially in the professions where time is everything. One of the advantages of entrepreneurship is if you get things rolling, you can decide who you want to do business with. That's very good for dealing with the asshole quotient in your life. Like if you were in a big law firm, you say, well, I don't want to work with that guy. Well, hey, you want to get paid? We don't have to do business with that guy. And if that means we make a little less, we have a better life for it. I mean, I'm not trying to be utopian, but you got to think about the cost benefit of things. The one material thing I had a desire for, I mean, it's a slight exaggeration, but not too much, when I was younger, was to have a cruising boat that would allow me to get away. I worked on, first of all, we had a little 16.5-foot boat when I was a kid, 5 miles from here. Great. But then I worked on boats 2 summers when I was in college. So I got paid to learn how to run a big boat. I mean, you know, 47 feet, 57 feet. One guy did nothing but cruise with his wife, and the other guy only wanted to race. So it just always, I responded to that. And I have a boat. I've got a 60-foot sailboat. I've had the boat for 32 years, and it was built for me and my first wife. In fact, I did everything I said you shouldn't do. I was working too hard. I was taking a lot of risks. In the late 80s, it looked like we'd split up. And then we got back together, which was the way it should have been. And as our getting back together project, we already had 2 perfect children, so we didn't need to go for 3. And we had this boat built. And the fantasy of the boat was long distance, relatively short-handed cruising. When I saw the lifestyle in New York, I realized this isn't really for me. And the value of having a lot of cash is I mean, my son, very smart comment he made when he was about 20. He said, money is energy. And I had seen having more capital as extra colors on a palette. So you're working on a canvas and you can do more things with it. You don't have to have the money. We touched on this earlier. I mean, money is around. People who've got money or who run money are looking for things to do with people they think they can do it with successfully. So you can do both. But when you start seeing people who can only talk about money and people who can only think about money and they want to tell you how expensive the wine was that they had last night, I'm telling you, drink it tonight, pee it in the morning. I mean, I don't care what you're dealing with. That's the story. Nobody's doing it any different. And it's a question of your values. And I'm not trying to be preachy here, but I think it's sustaining. And I think as a society of free people who respect the rule of law and value human dignity and human life and opportunity, how much money do you need? I think the whole thing's going crazy. And finance capitalism is a double-edged sword. You know, a lot of goods come out of it because things have been done to create more value, more wealth, finance more innovation. But boy, it's so heavily skewed now, it's just crazy. The prime civic virtue of character has pretty much been replaced by celebrity. And you can be famous for having done something, but in our world now, you can be famous and considered a celebrity just for having money. So that's the difference from where I grew up. And I mean, this is in New England. I mean, it's different here, but I don't think it's healthy. And it's happening all over the world. The money culture is running wild and nobody puts any brakes on it. I don't have regrets about that. I mean, I can say there were times when work got in the way of things. You know, it's a constant balancing act in life. You can't do all things at all times. And I'm totally at peace with how I lived my life, recognizing numerous mistakes. I feel like life is, you live it like an elastic band, and you can take it out to the limits, and you can hold it there for a while, but you gotta let it come back in. Then you can take it out again. But if you take it out too far, you're gonna break it, and then it's done. And you can't live in here. So I think people have to be mindful of that, and you can work it out. But if you try to do all the things all the time, I don't see how that works. I've had an incredibly rich life. Not easy, but a rich, rewarding, satisfying life. I'm grateful. And I'm grateful to have been born in this country where these opportunities are found more readily than any place else. Try things and see what gives you pleasure in doing it, and then consider following that, ramping up your involvement and ramping up your productivity in that area, because I think that's a great start. I mean, would you go out with a woman that you weren't attracted to? What's the point? You know, there are things that we're attracted to. You just have to let yourself find out. And getting to know can be as important as getting to yes. So you save yourself a lot of trouble. You say, well, I'm not going to be a lawyer. Well, okay. I'm not going to be a doctor. Okay. I think I'll be a photographer. Wow. Did you see that sunset yesterday? Or whatever it is, you know. I mean, that's why your stomach tells you things that your brain won't let through. If you have a passion for something, it is a form of compensation. I mean, to some extent, you got to have cheeseburger money, but it is its own reward. And it gets you through the hard times when you're just working because you're making money at it. I couldn't stand the merit badge approach. You know, I'm doing this because I want a merit badge so I can then do that and get another merit badge, which a lot of people, I'm sure you've seen this, a lot of people, maybe not the guys you're talking to, they've all broken out, but most of the world seems to be on that path. They're looking for approval, which makes you a conformist. I'm not saying people should be wildly non-conformist, but don't be afraid to be a majority of one. The best analogy, and this will help any viewer, is to real estate. This is a hard asset business. We're renting space in a marketplace, and we're subject to the laws of supply and demand, and and then some. Much greater volatility than real estate, but it's comparable, and it's capital intensive. You don't get a premium, particularly for the value of your management. You're buying and selling assets, and everything comes back to a net asset perspective, not like price earnings and growth potential and all that. So you make your money with cash flow that you generate from the ships, and then if your timing was good, you may get asset appreciation. That is not absolutely necessary to have a successful investment. It's icing on the cake if you get it. But you could build a ship and have long-term employment and get it paid down substantially. The trick here is to reduce the risk as fast as possible and then hang on for either normal markets, which are quite rewarding, or super hot markets, which are spectacularly rewarding. The cash is coming out of these ships like water out of a hydrant. You know who D.K. Ludwig was? Daniel K. Ludwig? At the end of World War I, he was probably the biggest ship owner, non-public in the world. He had over 100 ships. Guy had about an 8th grade education. He had built in Japan 2 structures. One was a power plant and one was a pulp mill. And he had them floated over across the Pacific, up the Amazon, and set on pilings on the River Jari. And he was growing eucalyptus trees, a fast-growing tropical tree, to turn them into pulp. And then some Brazilian political people started trying to move in on him, and they wanted to get paid for this and that. And he said, and he shut it down. And this was in his later years, and he wrote off $500 million, which at that time was a monstrous amount of money. He died. His right-hand man was a guy I knew, and I was talking to them about some ships that they still owned and might want to sell. And we're in old man Ludwig's office, and this guy is telling me this story that one day old man Ludwig says to him, "So, the River Jari project, what do you think of that?" He's sort of got a conventional view of this. $500 million is a lot of money to lose. An unthinkable amount of money to lose. It's an unthinkable amount of money. Okay, so the guy kind of mumbles, says, yeah, he said, well, it was a success. And the guy mumbles a little more because he doesn't know what to say to his boss. He says, it was a success because we did it. Now, this is another part of the story which is true. I was walking across town at one point on 59th Street, and across the street, I thought I saw D.K. Ludwig walking down the street. I was not in the shipping business at that time, but I was thinking about it. So he's walking down the street. I hear him say to this guy, well, you've got to be a bit of a dreamer in life. And I thought, oh my God. So you ask me. Now, my greatest satisfaction is not a single story, but the fact that I did it.
If you want to support our podcast and stay informed about our latest episodes, we're always creating new content every week for our podcast. Subscribing is the best way to ensure that you don't miss out on any of it. Please hit the subscribe button. We really appreciate it. God blesses you all and be legendary, my friends.